Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
How often in life when we suspect that things aren't quite right, for example our health, we just carry on and ignore the symptoms. We don't investigate and get curious about how we could possibly fix them or change the problem. Now the thing about symptoms is that more often than not, even though we expect and hope they'll disappear, they don't. We then find out that we have a medical issue that could have been solved if we just paid attention to the information our bodies were sending us. Today we're talking about reading and children with learning differences. The same principle is at play here. Research has shown that many parents are aware of their child's learning challenges as either indicated by the child or their teachers or tutors. But the parents don't really want to listen. They live in hope it might just go away. Maybe they'll grow out of it. But usually it doesn't. Do you know of any parents like this? Or is this you? The thing is that children with learning differences often need a different way of approaching their learning. Our guest today is Dr. Victoria E. Waller, who's passionate about the needs of children who don't fit into the traditional pattern of learning. She believes that listening and acting on information can help meet your child's different needs, and it's imperative. Often when children are struggling either physically or mentally, parents do tend to ignore it, no matter what advice they're given. Taking on board what people say and not burying it under the rug, so to speak, is very important. The earlier the actions taken to help the child who learns in a different way, the better. I'm Kate Mason and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Today I'm talking to Dr. Victoria E. Waller. With 4 decades of experience, she's a renowned reading specialist, an advocate for students, and a guiding force for children facing challenges such as reading difficulties, classroom behaviour issues, and a sense of exclusion. Her book, Yes, Your Child Can, serves as a valuable resource for parents, educators and therapists, presenting proven techniques to foster success with children with learning differences and uncover their unique strengths. In addition to her work in education, Dr. Waller is the creative mind behind My Disney Busy Bags for travel on planes and cars, for Disney and Hyperion books, and she's designed backpacks and toys for M&M Mars Incorporated. As a founding member of LA Children's Museum, a seasoned speaker for the International Reading Association, and a central figure in Eve Bunting's Caldecott Medal Award-winning novel 6th Grade Sleepover, Dr. Waller's impact extends across various fields. Notably, she's recognised as a rock star tutor for Kourtney Kardashian's children. Vicky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be in Australia.
We're so happy to have you. Look, thank you so much for being with us today, because what I want to do is, before I explore your inspiring work, I'd love to hear about you and what you were like in your formative years and the experiences that shaped you. Like, what were you like as a student, and who actually inspired you to believe in what you do?
You know, that's an interesting question, because a 16-year-old interviewed me. She has a podcast, and she asked some questions like that, and I had to think back to I think my mother was very creative. She didn't work. She was a woman who did not work. My father worked, but she was the one she says I wasn't a surprise, but my sisters are 10 years older than me.
That's kind of it.
And I was born in 1945 when there was a big war, but okay. And I think because she always said, you can do it. And I was always I wasn't the smartest kid in class, but I got good grades, but I had to study. But I was the most creative. If we wanted to do a play, I was making up a play. By the time I was 10, I was already babysitting for 25 cents an hour, which my children love hearing that. I was babysitting with the people down the block, would go bowling, and I would do creative things with them at 10. So I started thinking about how early did I do that. By 14, there was a center down the block from us, And I had a group, I was trying to remember, I guess they might have been 9 or 10, and I was maybe 14 or 15. And I led them, and we talked about their problems and things, and I started doing creative things. I can't draw myself, but I can think of ideas, and then the children do it. I don't know. It's always been like that. So it started really at a young age, loving working with kids.
That's amazing, because it just shows that you are an intuitively a creative person. And it doesn't mean...
I'm nothing like my students. They are artists, and they think of creative things, but they also make things that are so unusual. I mean, I think I started thinking about, why do you like working with children with learning differences? And I think because they're interesting.
Yes.
My first classroom, I loved the kids that I had to teach special reading to, because we went and made we were in DC, we made the entire state, and I moved all the chairs back. And I remember the principal would walk by, and he was so mean, and he'd close the door. We were making too much noise. We made the entire city out of cardboard boxes and everything. And it was unbelievable, and I loved it, and they learned about their city.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just think there was that something about me. It's a funny thing that happened the other day. I asked the mom, what is the new little boy, 6-year-old, what do you like? What does he like? Is there something special? And, they'll say, she said he likes his iPad. Well, that's not what I'm talking about, right? But okay. So the next day we were writing, and he had to finish a sentence, I like learning about. And he said, hazmat people and hazmat people who are, I said, what? I've never had a hazmat kid. Now I have kids who love computers. I have kids who love sharks. I love kids who like cars. I have kids who like all kinds of unusual things, but I've never had a kid. I was like in shock. Well, he wants to be a hazmat worker when he's older. And his mother went, oh yeah, he does love that. I said, but he's 6 years old. She said, oh, here's the picture of him from Halloween. Amazon has hazmat costumes for a 6-year-old. Okay, now I've never heard of that in my whole life, but the picture of him in his whole hazmat garb, I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard in my life. So I'm learning about being a hazmat worker. I said, oh, do you do fires? He went, no, I want to do the chemical, when the chemicals get out and they harm people, and I want to save the people. And I said, so you're going to clean up the chemicals? Oh, my God. So meanwhile, I'm talking the next day to a Secret Service. He was head of Secret Service for Clinton. I met him on a plane. Don't even ask. So, of course, he came to my school. He's fantastic. And I said to him, I can't believe, he says, oh, Vicki, I know all the hazmat workers, because of course they have to work around the Secret Service to make sure that there's no chemicals and I thought, this is in 40 years the most bizarre I've ever heard. I want to be an hazmat worker.
That's amazing.
So that's what I do. I find what they love. And teachers will say, I'm so busy. I can't do that. But they can do that. If you're talking about workers, if you're talking about something, let the children, one third grader, he comes in and he says to me, the teacher gave me, I have to study strawberries. And I went, what? What third grade boy? What? He knew the most about roller coasters.
What?
I don't even know how he got to that, because his grandmother lives in Cedar Point, which is in Ohio, which is the roller coaster capital of the world. He knows everything about them. So I nicely wrote to the teacher and I said, do you think instead of strawberries, this third grader could write? She said, of course. Now, I personally think the mother hated this teacher. She was so boring. I said, you know what? But she listened to me, and she listened to me working with him, and he was very successful. And his roller coaster, I had him interview the president I just called on the phone. I had him interview the president. He interviewed the president, and he made a roller coaster, and he did it by inches. Like 1 inch equaled so many feet, so that he could make the mock-up. It was like unbelievable. Unbelievable. And he wrote it, and he did everything about it. He made it. He wrote it. So I try, every child has something special. And I just think, if teachers would just take the time, and you're talking about the states, this one student got Oklahoma, and I went, what's in Oklahoma? So we got this book, a great book about the states, and in Oklahoma, they have this man makes automobiles, and he's made them for like 50 or 60 years. He might be dead by now because he's way older than me. And so we found this man. We found him. I called him on the phone. The kid wrote questions, and he interviewed him and sent him his book on the cars that he's built. So it doesn't take a lot to just say, do a project on something you're interested in.
No.
It doesn't take a lot. And then the child is learning and excited, using passion and strengths.
And there's a lot of math that goes into things like that too, calculations and everything. Like it's basically, look, I do understand my son is a teacher, and I do understand that teaching today has really changed from when I was a teacher 30 years ago, and that there are so many differences in the classroom and the behavioural issues that they have in classrooms. But like you say, I actually think that this is such an easy thing to focus on, someone else's passion, to create a focus that keeps them focused, that it just seems so easy, doesn't it? It just seems like, well, really, there's nothing hard about this. But it's actually letting people know this, but what you have discovered through your lifetime, and helping them to understand the way to go forward with it. So is this what inspired you to write your book, Yes, Your Child Can? And in doing so, were there any challenges while you were writing it? Yes, show me. I've got it here. Yes.
Yes, because I wrote a 360-page book about my one student who I taught to read because he loved to cook. We spent 7 hours a week. 3 hours. When I think back to that, it's amazing. 3 hours on Saturday, and we always did things with cooking. And I just think I wrote the school said you have to write what you do with them each time. Well, 7 hours a week, I was always, and the principal kept saying, this is a book. So I found a person who helps you with books, and I found her. She was wonderful, and I was so excited. And she said, it's a great book, but who's going to buy it? Who will it make a difference to? It's a great story about this child and how he progressed and what you did with him. But who's buying it? And so I went back home very upset.
Yes,
300
of course. Oh, my goodness.
And then one day a parent comes to me, and she's hysterical because she's crying. I open the door. What's wrong? What's wrong? And they say, my son has to be tested by a brain doctor. What's wrong with his brain? And I went, there's nothing wrong with his brain. He was 7 years old. You could say any animal in the world, and he could tell you something about it. He couldn't read, but he listened. He talked to his parents, read to him all the time. And I thought, I have to help her. He has a good brain. There's nothing wrong with his brain. So that was one thing. And then within a couple of, and I didn't know what to do with it. Then a couple of weeks later, the doorbell rings, and Dexter shows up, who's the kid who now is thanking me because he's involved with trees. And I'm thinking to myself, I have to show parents how to do a step-by-step, okay? Your kid isn't snapping out of it. Do you know, this is weird, it's very scary, 48% of parents believe their children will snap out of it, and 33% of educators think these kids are lazy. This is still a statistic. 2024, and they're thinking that, and it's totally wrong. So I wrote the book on exactly what I would tell my parents. Okay, now you have to stop being afraid. Let's get going on this. Okay, what is he's not snapping out of it. Okay, what do we do? What's the testing all about? And there are all kinds of people that test. You don't necessarily have to have a psychiatrist. There are educational therapists. There are all kinds of people that can help you. What is the child good at? What does the child need help in? And they shouldn't be afraid of medication. Do you know, the other day somebody said to me, well, if he goes on medication, he's going to become a drug addict. I looked at her and said, if you do not get him help and get him medication, like I need medication. I've been taking thyroid medication since I'm 30. I don't even know why, but something about my thyroid. Okay. If you don't get him help, He is going to be miserable. He's going to be negative. He's not going to learn. You have to so I help them in the book, get past the fear of medication, get past it. And you know what happens if you're 14 and 15 and you have no medication and you have attention and learning issues? You self-medicate. That's what you do. So you want the medicine is to help you and help your brain. It's not something that you're getting drugs like that, the way parents think about it. Then you have to hire the right person to help your child. It doesn't have to be a doctorate like me. I met a girl the other day. We were sitting at a table and she said, I have learning differences. I said, oh, good. What's your passion? 32 years old. Do you know who taught her? Her second grade teacher loved little kids, but was a genius. She took her all the way through high school, tutoring her.
Wow. That's huge,
so it
isn't
doesn't
it?
have to be somebody with a doctorate. It could be a good teacher. There's so many good teachers who can help a child. Hiring that good person. The team, do they have speech issues? That's another thing. I sat with this family. He was a very big person in Hollywood. And I said, I really think you should get some testing done on your child. I really think he has a speech problem. And so like the word that, he writes D-A-T. Dat. Okay. And the father looks at me and goes, my son doesn't have any. That's not my son. You must be thinking of a different kid. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get killed. I mean, this is horrible. This is like one of the major writers in Hollywood. And I'm telling him. So I go, after they leave, I go running to the classroom. And what do you think the kid has? A major speech problem.
Right.
I just saw him the other day. He's at a very big school now. And you know what we talked about when I saw him? It was really weird. There was an active shooter in the library where I was teaching him. And we had to go under the table in this room we were in because it was glass. And he said, Vicki, I was just thinking about that the other day. I said, well, were you thinking about that I taught you to read? He said, well, that too. Hiring the right person, a team. Who are these people? Whether it's a speech person or whatever, reading, writing, executive functioning, how to put everything together. My kids learn to read. Writing and spelling is a problem. And in that way, I think you can teach them these phonograms like ITE, things like that, so they learn to read that. I don't believe the science of reading. They're driving me crazy, the science of reading. It's everything I've done for 40 years. It's nothing new, nothing. Just do it all. Do it all.
What is the current science of reading?
Science reading, what they're saying is don't do writing and learning by writing what they want to write. You have to do phonics in isolation. So pa, 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 ka, ka. One of the New York Times too, they wrote this article and they said they have this new program and they told the program, this woman's smarter than me. She said she just put it together. Okay. I did it in 1980. It was it was a whole system that the New York Times made. And I tried it and the kids went nuts because no reading and no interest. You just sit there going pa, 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 ka, ka, ka to learn the phonics, the phonetic sounds. And I'm laughing that this woman comes out with it, I think in 1995 or maybe 2000. She buys it from the New York Times. She calls it hers, okay? And she set up with the same box from the New York Times. She set up all over the world clinics. And truthfully, she's smarter than I am. She's making a fortune.
Wow.
Kids, one of my students, you know what he said to me? The mother said, well, at least he's learning to read. He hates it. I said, oh, that's great. He hates learning to read. Science to me, it's writing, it's reading, it's enjoyment. It can be phonics. If you do it in the context of maybe they write a story. Okay, let's look at this word with some of the sounds, but not in isolation. And it's just so funny to me. I mean, and it's the same old people talking about it, people that are my age. They're finally leaving. A lot of them have left from Harvard and stuff because they say, oh, no, we have to do the science of reading.
And like you say, as a teacher that's been around forever, I was the 80s with the phonics and all of that. And then they got rid of it. And then they kind of cycle around. And I agree with you. I think that It's a whole process. It's not just one
Yes.
separate thing. Now, my son learned really well with phonics. It really helped him sound words out, and he really got it. But my daughter, she didn't want anything to do with that. So, like you say, it's really got to be an all-round thing that they can learn from different things that are there. So that's the thing about teachers, though. You're not out there teaching the teachers how to teach, Vicky. This is our problem, really. Is
In college right now, you get one book on the teaching of reading, and maybe there's a chapter on teaching a child to read. They're really not taught how to do it, so they just do what they know or whatever system they have in their classroom. Everybody sticks to that. I don't know. I mean, I've been fighting this for years and years and years. And one teacher said to me, well, you do passions and strengths, and I can't do that in my class. And I went, you know what? When you gave that project to do, all you have to do is say, everybody bring in an Amazon box with some things in it that you could build. She says, I don't have time to build. I said, sure you do. The time you're reading, you say an hour today, you can build. You won't believe what the kids will come up with. And then they can write what they're doing. And then you can teach around the words they're using.
And the problem is that, like as with a lot of uni degrees, basically you never really touch on the people and the force of what you're actually going to be putting into place. So I think your next thing should actually be a visual series. See, my son's he's visual. He's not a reader. Like you say, my son read comics all his life. And then he read gaming magazines. And people used to say to me, has he read a book? And I'd say, don't think he's ever read a book, but I really don't care because I know he can read, and that's fantastic. And so when it came to year 12 assignments, he would just Google the book, and he would get all the information on it, and then he would write about the information. And one part of me used to go, is this wrong, Kate, or is he just very clever? And I went with clever because
Clever.
I thought I'll go with clever. I won't go with cheating or not reading the book. And he made it through school with great marks because it's what you say.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm very fascinated with this AI. And I've asked the student who I'd written the book about originally, and I said, can you use AI? I mean, most of my students they're bright. They're going to learn to read. And a lot of them get on medication. It helps them focus. They learn to read. Writing is very difficult. Now, on the computer and typing helps. And if they do know the phonograms, then at least they put it in and it'll spell check for them. So I said, what are you doing with AI? If you put in something, AI will write. He said, well, the problem is if the teacher finds out that you've used AI, you are banned from, you're out of school. He said, number two, right now, the things they're writing on AI, if it's about a certain subject, it may not be all correct. But still, I think AI for my students is helpful because it helps them see how to write a paper. That's the hardest thing, I think. I think writing is the hardest for my students. They know the stuff in their head, but it's very hard to get it on paper. That comes last. I think it really comes last. But all these things in my book, I think that's why I made a step-by-step, because it tells you who should be on the child's team. It tells you about reading, writing, executive functioning, technology, vacation meltdowns. All my parents go on vacation. They take the kids off of meds before they go on.
I was reading that. That's crazy, isn't it? Why would you?
Right. Well, and guess what happened? Dad came back and said, we had the worst vacation ever. I said, why? You were looking forward to it. He said, well, I said, was he on meds? He goes, no, we thought it's a vacation. I said, no, you don't get a vacation on your meds. I don't have a vacation on my thyroid medicine. You don't have a vacation.
No.
I also have a lot of books, to read that you can read to your kid. It's funny. My son, Andrew, only read comic books. And my husband kept saying, when is he going to read? When is he going to read? I said, but you don't understand. He's reading. He has thousands of comic books. He's in it all the time. Well, after he got past reading comic books, he reads books. The only thing is, you want to know the truth, he's still reading comic books
Yeah.
in the morning.
But it doesn't matter. Still his passion, isn't it? And my son's still reading gaming magazines. So, I'm like, yeah, he's 30. So, it is what it is in that sense. Like you say, it is passion. And that passion that they had around those reading matters taught them to read. Now, one thing I just want you to define for me is with the ADHD and the medication. Now, there's a lot of ADHD showing up currently, and some of it, like I have a belief, is the food colorings and things that are in our foods, because only from the perception of, like, I took my children off food colorings and food additives when they were young, and my son drank a blue Powerade when he was about 16. And I came home and he was walking around the table really fast. And he said, Mum, my brain is going so fast, I can't get the words out of my mouth. Like, my head is just messed up. And it was just one drink. Now, I think, so what I want to know is, how do you distinguish between the ADHD that you medicate? I know you describe it in your book, but I just think it's really interesting for people to hear, what does the parent do? Who do they see? How does that process go? Because I've no doubt that there are many, many children with ADHD and adults out there. That's why I think this is really important for adults to listen to too, because they may be functioning with brains that are running 1,000,000 miles a minute as well, and might find relief in that themselves. So can you just give me a rundown of what you think parents should do? How do they intervene and who do they go to?
I think the biggest thing is, at the school, somebody will probably be saying something
Right.
about your
Yes.
child.
Yeah.
Either they're inattentive. Do you know what's funny? I was thinking about the students I've had. The students who are ADHD and hyper, they somehow get help earlier. The ones who are inattentive, they don't, because they're quiet, so they're not paying attention. They don't think about it. You really have to get them tested. You can get them tested by a medical doctor. If you go to, like, some of them are not medical doctors, it goes on your insurance probably, but they have their pediatric, there are some ones that start with children, but they're doctors. Then you have in the schools, they have fabulous, let's say your kid's in a private school, you can go to your local school and they have a whole group of people who will test, psychologists. You have to get your child tested to find out, okay, what are they good at? What do they need help in? It may come that they don't need meds, but if they do, you can't be afraid of them. You'll go to a doctor. You'll watch, how is it working? There's such a huge difference, and the parents, they're so funny, because I have some kids on Sunday, and I know when he hasn't gotten meds. Are you kidding me? He's all over the place, and he's not talking. He's not listening. And then I'll go, did he get his meds? And the mother or father go, oh my gosh, he forgot. We forgot. You don't forget that.
I was going to say, how can you, when your child's behaving like that, how can you actually
Right.
not have forgotten?
That fear of medication, we have to pass that, because I've not found a child who had attention and learning differences that they could succeed without it. It's very hard. They're very frustrated, and emotionally it's a mess for them. And you have to have a team. You have to have a good principal that maybe will talk to you about it. You have to have a doctor. I have a student, he's also seeing a talk therapist besides getting meds, which I think is very good. The parents are being proactive. You want to do this when they're young.
I think you do. Yeah, and
Oh,
often we live in fear. We live in fear of it. Jack had his vestibular system was out. I didn't know any of this, even though I was a teacher. His vestibular system was out and his sensory system was out, because he was a preemie as well. And that was picked up by a girlfriend of mine who is very similar to you. She is passionate about children, and she picked it up at 5. She was teaching him. And she said to me, Kate, you need to go now. Go and do something about all of this now. And I did. And we worked on it for years. And he's a fabulous kid today. However, she said to me, most of the parents she spoke to ignored her because they were scared, and they never did anything until their child was, 15 or 16, like you say. So can you tell us some of the things that the children who are on medication, what they say to you about their brain and how it helps them? Because you have examples of what they say.
They tell me that they can focus. Otherwise, their brain is going, like you said, their brain is going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I asked my student, the one who I originally wrote the book with, I said, what's in your brain? He said, Vicki, I'm thinking about everything but school. And the teacher's talking and I'm thinking about the baseball game I'm going to be in, or I'm thinking about the TV show. Now we have computers. They're stuck after COVID. If you walk, I'm walking down the street and here are these moms with 2-year-old babies in the carriage. And what are the babies holding? iPads. They're already on their iPads. They're becoming addicted already. And I don't even know what to I don't even know what to say to that. During COVID, we're really in trouble because of that, because the kids are all, and parents are saying, well, maybe they have attention issues. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they do, or maybe they don't. It just could be they haven't been, one of my students, it's funny, I wrote it up for the New York Times because it was so funny to me. I did him on Zoom, which was very difficult for kids with learning differences.
Yes.
I had him on Zoom and he made himself an alien from outer space. And I didn't care. He was talking to me and he was reading. He had the books at home and I'm reading. Okay. And the teacher finally emailed me and said, I can't stand this. He's always an alien. I said, I think it's the most creative. I taught an alien to read. That's my claim to fame. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's good and it's bad. I don't know the kids and what happens. Not that I say anything bad about any teachers, because I think teachers I've met are fantastic teachers. But I just think it's really hard when you're getting them off of, like, okay, if you're a kindergarten, first grade, second grade teacher, you're teaching reading. The kids skipped those grades because it was COVID. And if they went to third or fourth, they don't know how to teach reading. And I'm not saying that negatively, but when you're a fourth grade teacher, you're probably very smart.
You're expecting
all
them.
These things you're reading about. I'm telling you, I have a hard time reading all the stuff they read, but they don't know how to start at the beginning because they're used to kids reading.
That's one of my pet things. You and I could talk about that maybe on another podcast. Look, I just say to my daughter, I don't know what you say to your son, but she's 28 rather. And I say to her,
then you say nothing.
I say, yeah, that's right. No, I think she listens sometimes. I say to her, this is your problem to fix. You need to go back to where you and I came from, your child playing outside. You don't hand them a computer or something when they're bored or when you want to talk to somebody or when you're in a cafe. You bring games. I said, you can turn this around. What's going on at school right now, you can turn it around, but it's your job and it will be a job because it's so much easier to give a kid an iPad and not expect them to interact and have all that silence. So for me, it's the next generation. They're the ones that are going to have to recognize this and say, what's wrong with the children these days? We can do something because it's fixable. It's fixable. All of this, like you say,
But Kate, I don't know. I think it might have been fixable before COVID, but I think COVID just made it 100 million times worse because parents were trying to work from home and their kid was on the computer. And if they had learning differences or didn't, they were having trouble just maneuvering that. And so they said, here, take the iPad. Here, take this. Do this.
Yeah.
I know it's a very...
So you think it's too hard to untrain that?
I think we're stuck for a couple of years. I think we're really...
No, I think we're stuck for a long time.
Yeah, no, I think we are. But there was a funny story I loved. One of the mother, the kid was on his computer on Zoom in the mother's bedroom, and the mother came out of the shower nude, so the whole class saw the mother walking out nude. That's my favorite story. I just love that story.
Oh my goodness, the poor woman. Oh, look, Vicki, I'm going to have to wind us up now. I'm really sorry. I really don't want to do this. Look, is there anything that you could share, just a couple of things with our listeners today that they could put into practice with children, whether they're their children or whether they're children in a classroom, whether there's a teacher listening or a therapist or anyone? What could you put straight away into practice with children with learning differences that you think would be an immediate?
You have to find their strengths and passions. And if they have a project at school, like the kid who had the project and was given third grader boy was given strawberries. Third grade boy.
Right.
Strawberries.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
He knew everything about roller coasters. Okay. There was another child. I mean, say to the teacher, could my child do this? So in other words, you're not being obnoxious with the teacher. Like, don't do that in August. Go running to the teacher. I have a child. He has issues. Just be gentle. You can say, I'm getting him help and he has a tutor and he's getting speech therapy. Maybe in a month we could talk. So you have to be proactive but lovely and not
You do.
on top of the teacher. And you have to get help for the child after. This one class was 40 kids in a class. That teacher wasn't doing individual with the student. And you have to get a tutor or somebody, and it can be somebody who's really good at helping a child. And you have to let the child hopefully do things at home that they use whatever they love, whether it's creativity. This one mother, I said, oh, what is your child good at? And she said, computer. And I thought, okay, well. And he said, he said, oh, I really like to draw, Vicki. I said, oh, really? That's interesting. I love, I don't draw, but I like to do things with that. And the next time he came, he had drawn, he's 8 years old, a picture of my dog, seeing her one time, that I have up in my room because it was so
right.
And I said, Mother, he's awfully creative. She went, oh, yeah, he can draw. No, not, oh, yeah, he can draw. Involve him in things that he's good at. If he's having issues, then you have to find the things they're good at. Don't just say, you have to do this, you have to do that. They don't want to read. Read to them. Read to them about what they're... Listen, we have the internet now. You can go on the internet and find... it's funny, I had a child that he loved Google. This is 12 years ago, loved Google. And he said, well, Vicki, what did you use before Google? I said, I went to a place called a library, and I looked up things called books. And he said, fast forward, I'm in Australia, and there's a man with 2 kids, and we're in line to go to dinner. And I said, oh, where are you from? He's from Mountain View. Click, click. What's Mountain View? Google. Spent an hour in line talking to his kids. What books do you like? Got his card, vice president of Google. I took my Google kid and his father. We flew up and spent a day at Google. It was the most, of course, he said the best part of the day was in every room they had these big, huge bowls filled with candy, and you could eat as much candy as you want. Okay. I said there was a sign when you walked in that said you can bring your dog to work. I said we would.
Right.
You have to find the passion and sort of use that, whatever it is. Tell the teacher he's an expert at Lego. Maybe could he do a project using his Lego? You have to be proactive without being obnoxious with the teacher,
Thank you so much. Oh, your passion is amazing. I wish I'd had you in my life. It's just
you did a good job with your kids, but
But you know what? For all listeners out there, you are just the best thing since sliced bread. Seriously, your book is amazing, and that's back to front. Can you tell everyone
you can get it on Amazon?
Yes, and can you tell everyone where they can reach you, what your website is? Because we'll have it in the show notes, but if you can just tell us your website. Okay.
Well, the website they would be very interested in, the website, but the Instagram at Dr. Victoria Waller,
okay.
DrVictoria Waller. The reason that's the most interesting is I try to put up things that I'm doing with children, so they might get ideas for their own children. So you can get the book because that gives you how to go about and how to bring out the strengths and passions in your child. But then going there, and you can go to my website, Dr. Victoria Waller, but I think you'd like the Instagram because there's a lot of like the little hazmat boys. Can you believe that is a fun?
I can't.
Hazmat worker.
That is the best. How good for the hazmat industry. Thank you.
The funny thing is that the guy who is the Secret Service man said, oh, I can find him a hazmat worker to talk to. I don't know.
Oh, you must live a wonderful life. It just goes to show that talking to people and exploring other people, you must have such a vast array of friends and people that you know. So thank you for letting me have you on my show.
You should say, listen, Vicki, you need to come here and do in person. And then I have to say to my husband, I have an older and a half to go. Although I've been to Australia and I'm very upset because I went in, of course, I had to see my koala bear. That was the most exciting day of my life. And it was prickly and I didn't like the feel of it. And I was very disappointed in my.
That is sad.
Yeah.
That is really sad. I'm very sorry about that. Lucky it didn't poo on you, because that's what it did on my son, and he never touched another koala bear in his life either. So obviously they're not that special, but it's really interesting what people love to focus on when they come over. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. But in all of that, you've really made my show and made my day. So thank you, Victoria, for coming on.
The saying is, there's no problems in life, only solutions to be found. So listen to your child and anyone else who interacts with them on a regular basis. Act early on any learning differences or other issues that your child might have. Get curious, seek alternative solutions. Talk to specialists and use medication if deemed necessary. Find your child's passions and work with them. Oh, and the same goes for your health too. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and I'll see you next time.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.